we're live. Welcome everyone to Table Talk, where we talk all things tabletop. I'm your host, The Bad Luck Gamer, and unfortunately, I won't be joined today by my co-host because Nurgle took him, as always. So, pour one out for the homie, I suppose. But we have a... I don't know if I'd call it an interesting chat today. Mostly, we have a chat about what everyone's already talking about, which is the massive layoffs by Hasbro, and it's pretty insane how so many times in 1 year can a company just drop the ball. It's actually insane. So yeah, we're gonna talk about all things, all things about what's gonna happen to D&D, for instance. Excuse me. And the possible changes in the futures of tabletop. It's funny because I just made a video literally like a week or two ago about like tabletop is changing and all this kind of stuff. And now, like, almost as if a prophecy fulfilled, we have Wizards of the Coast immediately, well, Hasbro specifically, but Wizards of the Coast inevitably dropping the ball, because with these layoffs means whatever projects are being worked on, like D&D is going to take one of the bigger hits, because while D&D is like a sizable part of their department nowadays, it still pales in comparison to things like Magic the Gathering. And to be fair, I'm not a businessman. I'm not super privy to all the like what these people who are laid off did or how much of an impact this will actually have. This also seems to be a rather regular event from what I've been seeing. So that being the case, I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Also, is my chat just not working? Let's see. Nope. All right, it's working. So, there we go. Thank you, Dead Phoenix. I don't rely on you. Yeah, it's a messy time for Wizards of the Coast, which means it's going to be a messy time for D&D. Like, with the massive projects that D&D is working on, I don't know. It's probably a little too early in the stream to be talking about all this quite yet, so let's talk about some other stuff going on in the scene. Funny enough, I just released my Pathfinder 2e review, which I said as much in the video, but I've never made a review for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Mostly because what really motivated me to start working on stuff on YouTube was to make videos for people who are already playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I haven't seen NoNet's videos, so I don't know. I think it's particularly not irrelevant, but it's more like I don't think much anyone knows what this will actually change. Like I said, this seems like a pretty regular event for Hasbro and in this case WotC. So I know of like Mike Merle's getting laid off. It was pretty rough. That's a worrying if you enjoy D&D. Maybe it's a good thing for everyone else, but I don't know. It's terrible for Mike, of course, and many others. I've seen some pretty reputable people Ah, a good amount of them were art directors, which means probably an increase in AI art, which will be interesting to say the least. I don't know. Like I said, I as privy as I am, I mean, yeah, there's definitely that idea. I know Mike hasn't been doing anything super front scene for a while, but yeah, I don't know. It's a very unfortunate circumstance. Well, yeah, I'm sure well, I mean, it is greed because if they're booting a bunch of people from art departments, it means that they're going with a cheaper AI related direction. So, I don't know. It can't turn out good, right? Because at these big companies, they literally pay people to watch the market and watch what people's impressions on things. I mean, one bad take can cause a company's stocks to plummet. So I don't know why, if this is the direction they're going to go, that they would invest in AI, to be honest. That sounds like a really good way to make their stocks just drop to rock bottom. But yeah, so like I said, it's very fortunate that I just happened to come out with my Pathfinder 2E review. I'm currently waiting for Archive and Ethos to update for all the remaster stuff, so that the videos I plan on doing in the future just are a lot easier. It's a very easy resource to go to because I can just kind of stream Archive and Ethos itself without clipping a bunch of stuff from the books. So I was thinking to myself, what should I do to fill the gap? And I was like, I'll do a review for Pathfinder 2nd Edition and maybe some other games. I was gonna do a review for D&D 5e. That sounds like a terrible idea right now. So I'm not sure. But I'll probably do a review on Animal Beyond Fantasy. Oh no, and just until Archive and Ethos manages to get their ish together, which I understand it's a lot. They're pretty much, they have to make like a whole archived version of the website for the pre-remaster stuff so that they can have them separated, because that's something they said they would do. So I understand that's a lot of effort, but it's been like about a month, I think. No, has it been a month? Did they come out? I got the book so early that I can't remember when they were supposed to come out for everyone else. It's been a while. It's probably been about almost a month since the book has been out, though, and it's been pretty rough for a lot of people who want to look into the remaster stuff who just can't afford the books. So, like, I understand it's a very small team, and I'm just happy that we have a free resource, but it's also admittedly kind of unfortunate for people who really rely on things like Archive and Ethos. Apparently there's something they do every year to make the number go up, because they have to pay less people for a time, then have to pick up people again and kind of fall behind, but that doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, that's what I've been hearing. I've been hearing a wide variety of things, and that's kind of what makes me very hesitant to say anything definitive about what will happen versus what will not happen. The repercussion I know is going to happen, though, is people's outlook on Hasbro and WotC, especially because people don't care what these specifics are. People see WotC, people see a bunch of people laid off from WotC or whatever. They might even know that it's Hasbro related, and they're just gonna be like, well, D&D is gonna go into the pooper now. You know, it's gonna go down the drain, so better hop ship. It'll fluctuate. I think things will go back to normal. There's just so much that, like, Like, there's a certain elasticity to fandoms where sometimes, no matter how far it stretches in one direction or another, it always just kind of comes back to the same ground it was prior. But I hope that these repeated incidents are kind of like the EA fiasco, where EA just repeatedly under fire over and over and over for bad decisions, which eventually led to a big amount of like the indie market really going and exploding, and a lot of other companies that are putting out were putting out more, full-fledged games, getting a lot more revenue, and EA kind of having to switch things up to get back in the good graces of the community. I kind of hope it's something like that, where we start seeing a lot more people going around looking at other systems, other tabletop, and then, WotC, Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro being like, okay, let's get everyone back. Let's actually do some good work, and then D&D gets made better. And then we have a bunch of people who got into other games, while at the same time, D&D hopefully gets made better. I think that's probably the best outlook on what we could see here. But you're just gonna repeatedly get all these people who are gonna come in and they're gonna say, okay, what if just someone else bought D&D and did it better, right? But the thing is Hasbro's not gonna let go of D&D. Why would they? It prints money. Like, they make a board game, put D&D on it. It gets a lot more attention, They can do so much with just the name of D&D that's not even tabletop related. In fact, I'm pretty sure the D&D department, makes more money from non-TTRPG related areas than they do from anything actually TTRPG related. I'd almost put money on that. I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, who's gonna try to buy out the name, Like, I'm sure the going price for a D&D right now is hundreds of millions of dollars, And not only that, but that's a huge investment. So you have to be planning to make more than that in the next 5 years. D&D merchandise is wild. It's not a bad thing though, right? I'm actually pretty happy that D&D merch is a thing. I'm glad that people can go out and get various non-TTRPG related things when it comes to D&D. That's something that I hope a lot of tabletop gets in the future. Wouldn't it be really sick if Lancer got buildable model kits for their mechs? Because I think that'd be really, really cool. Or if they could expand into a war game tabletop version, like a Warhammer Lights. I think that'd be really cool. I'm all for merch and stuff like this. People want things related to things they enjoy, I would definitely get more stuff. I have some Pathfinder shirts. I do have some minis, and I would totally get stuff for Lancer too if Lancer came out with some more stuff. It's not like I make a ton of money I can buy a bunch of things, but I would if I could, Yeah, there is a Yo, Black Ouroboros, what's up? There is a spaceship combat game. I appreciate you, man. Where you can put this, that might be a little too much. I don't know about that, but I would just be happy with models that you could paint up. That'd be really cool. You know what'd be really cool? Heroescape version of Lancer. I mean, like, it's already hex-based, right? That'd be really cool. Just have buildable terrains. So, you know, kind of rewinding back a little bit. I'm all for D&D merch, you know. I'm all for stuff like that, for people to be so excited about TTRPG stuff that they get stuff related to it, even if they don't play the TTRPG. Just to see people who are getting merch from something that has traditionally been and is very closely associated with TTRPGs is really cool. And I just use Heroescape tiles. I mean, yeah, for sure. I'm just talking about like an actual game that's also like designed for it. You know what I mean? And again, we're talking about like physical merch. But I don't know. WotC and Hasbro have taken so many publicity hits over the course of this year alone. And it was even preemptively started, like, before this year even started, that I feel like a stunt like this, while traditional and while it's something they do so that they don't have to make big pay cuts to their CEOs or whatever, like, it's just gonna hurt the company. But I don't know. I'm not a money guy, honestly. I don't track that kind of stuff. I don't know what that actually means for how much money the company makes. And in all likelihood, it just means that other parts of the company will suffer more than the people who are actually, like, profiting from everything. You know? Like, if they have a particularly bad start to next year, everyone else is gonna suffer for it first. So I just, I think what I would like to see happen is a lot of the great people who worked and are still working for WotC, who do the TTRPG stuff, to just leave for greener pastures. That might not be viable, you know what I mean? Like, as much as everyone's like, oh yeah, I hope Paizo picks these people up, Paizo doesn't have infinite money. They can't just keep hiring a bunch of people, you know? Like, they have a limit on how many people they can hire. And the TTRPG market as a whole definitely can't hire all these people back. So, that being the case, like, I still would like to see more people take the initiative to leave, and I can only hope this will lead to D&D kind of suffering for a while when they have very inexperienced game designers, creators, whatever, working on the project, whoever they can hire, and they see the error of their ways and then they start actually investing. But who knows? That might be just wishful thinking. And yeah, Derek, I agree. The D&D movie was really good. I actually thoroughly enjoyed the movie itself. It was a really good movie. It was very tabletop-y, you know. Like, it was really, really fond of all the different aspects to it. And the characters felt really good and, like, relatable. And all of them were just quirky enough not to be annoying, but to be endearing and fun at the same time. Paizo can barely keep WotC from poaching their own employees. Yeah, that's true. And when you got the money, you know. Do you think that this will cause the D&D VTT to nickel and dime the consumers? I mean, that was probably the plan to begin with. It's just depending on implementation. You know, ironically, I think this might actually prevent them from nickeling and diming as hard as they wanted to. Because again, it's all publicity stuff, you know. Like, what is the public opinion going to do to adjust how they work in the future? You know, maybe they have to take cuts on profitable things, like, you know, doing a whole bunch of DLC stuff for the VTT just to earn consumer, you know, good graces. Maybe they just say fuck it, you know. I mean, D&D, I think, is still too big to fail, and it's really hard not to be like super hyperbolic about what's going on currently with everything, because it feels really terrible, you know. It feels like this is feels really rough for the Hasbro WotC side of things. But as people were talking about earlier, it seems like it was mostly people taking out the art department, and maybe that's also just a traditional thing of the art department really suffering. Maybe they're gonna go with more AI art. There's just too much that we don't know about this particular situation. And we already saw, after the OGL nonsense, after the Pinkerton situation, like WotC and Hasbro regained a lot of the stocks and the market that they lost at the beginning of the year. Not to what they were before, but they were still gaining a lot of ground. And we're not going to see the repercussions of this for a couple months, you know, because that's just how like markets work, is they always kind of lag behind events by weeks to months, give or take. So I don't know. It feels like a big drop. And at the very least, a lot of people are going to be considering looking at other tabletop games. But there's plenty of people who are just happy to keep playing D&D even with just what they have. You know, I mean, and to be fair, right? How much does Wizards of the Coast actually drop every year that really offers that many new player choices or options or whatever, you know? Like actual game books that you can use to make your character better, rather than like an adventure path or whatever, where you have to find the handful of new things you can add to your characters that way. Like people don't need to actually buy D&D books that often, which is baffling to me, considering that they print out so many of these adventure books, which, I mean, must be selling, right? Because they wouldn't keep doing it otherwise. They didn't just tell people to keep making rules on things. So thank you, Rex Fellis. The 19th. My Roman numerals are terrible. I appreciate it. But yeah, I don't know. This is absurd, but at the same time, it seems to be a normal occurrence. So, like, how bad is this? How bad are we really talking about it? Like, 14 years and only one new class? Yeah. Has it been 14 years? My God. That makes me feel old. 69. Thank you. I said my Roman numerals were terrible. Oh, I didn't see the L. That was why. When did D&D 5e come out? It probably hasn't been that long. No, it definitely hasn't. It's been almost 10 years. But still, I mean, that doesn't... The statement doesn't change. Almost 10 years and one class coming out is still terrible. Yeah. Thanks for stopping by then, Thumb Ugly, I'm assuming. Yeah. And I mean, still, like, a lot of people don't understand how well 4E still did. Like, people are like, oh yeah, Pathfinder First Edition sold more than 4E or did better than 4E. That's just not true at all. Like, people at Paizo will tell you that's not true at all. Like, when you have such a huge Goliath, like the D&D franchise, the D&D trademark, you know, like, you don't have to try that hard to sell product in that line. Like, I think that's the thing that blows me away the most is D&D is generally profitable no matter really what you do. The only reason why Hasbro really doesn't give it as much love as it could is because it doesn't its profit efficiency is not as good as something like Magic the Gathering. You know, where Magic the Gathering's only major cost is card production and like the artists. So I don't know. I feel like this whole thing is just going to be, it's not infinite profit, the greatest sin. Exactly, you know. And this is the thing that like really blows me away. It's very obvious that Dungeons and Dragons and the like are perfect for generating a like a very stalwart and stout viewer base. Like, it's really good to have a very strong community built around D&D because it has always had one. But obviously with like the advent of Critical Role and now the new sweep of content creators making their own channel or their own like live plays, we are seeing a definite loyalty to the idea of D&D. Like, you could build a very like stable, safe market around D&D. So the fact that watching Hasbro has been doing this kind of stuff for a while now, honestly, it just indicates that it doesn't make as much money as they would like, and they don't care about the long-term application of having, you know, a very stable income of people who enjoy a particular IP, which is very common in markets today anyway. So I don't know. Like, this whole issue with Hasbro and laying off a bunch of people seems really terrible, but I feel like it's just going to be a non-issue in the end. Like, sucks for all the people who got let off, sure, but I don't think D&D and Hasbro are going to suffer too much for it in the end. People have obviously shown that it doesn't matter to them that much that they keep doing these kind of things. I don't know what is required to actually really break the people's trust. You know what I mean? 4E is actually a great and balanced game, but IMO, it doesn't feel like D&D. They were trying to make tabletop WoW and sell it under the D&D brand. I mean, I played some 4E, and the biggest problem I found with it was just the homogeneity of the game. There was so much balance in the game that, I mean, like, there are so many different classes that just played exactly the same with different flair, and there wasn't really any strategic value in picking one or the other more often than not. Not only that, but everything felt super like video gamey in a way. Like, you get your once a day abilities and everything like that. Having played a little bit of 4E, and much rather the flavor of D&D to 5E. You'd prefer the flavor of 5E, I'm assuming, which I would say I would agree for the most part. Like, I do definitely see the video gaminess that 4E had. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either. I feel like 4E could have just been a different game and it probably would have done a lot better. But because it was D&D, a lot of the game aspects to it, a lot of the overbalance to it played very against it, considering D&D's a very narrative game. That's why 5th edition, though being one of probably the worst balanced versions of D&D to date, I'm pulling that completely out of my ass, by the way. I have no idea. I haven't even cared to look. Oh, you meant to prefer 4E to 5E. I see. But I'll stick on the statement because I think it's true. A lot of people enjoy the new 5E because it feels like your characters, when you build them right anyway, can do a lot of really crazy things. You know, balance be damned. And I think that's what really sticks it with a lot of people, is a lot of people who make these really wild characters that can do very crazy things. And those characters really stick out to them because they feel like an accomplishment of a build. You know what I mean? So even though it's terrible for game balance and some classes really get left in the dust, it doesn't matter because everyone has some broken cool character somewhere on in their folders of characters that they've made. It's a shame I can't support such a company anymore. I mean, yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I think I would agree. I mean, it's not like I buy D&D products anyway. Like, I want D&D to be good. I want people to be able to enjoy D&D. And it's obvious that a lot of people have definitely fallen in love with it. I want to see more for those people. But I also want the rest of the market to have room to breathe. But even if WotC was to give them the room to breathe, that does not mean that they'll be able to immediately take up that space. Because in the end, one of the biggest problems in the TTRPG market is advertising and actual marketing. The number of TTRPGs that come out that you don't hear about unless you find a random video or someone tells you about it or something, like, that's the biggest reason why TTRPGs really just suffer, is because there's no way to know about them unless you go regularly to bookstores, you know? Like, unless you're looking for them, it's very hard to find them. And that's the whole point of marketing and advertising, is to show it to so many people that people who might not have been thinking about wanting it see it and be like, oh, you know what? Maybe I do want to try that. Or that does seem interesting, you know? I like 5E, but 3.5 was my first edition of D&D I played. I'm currently in a 3.5 game, and I still love the system. Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, they're just different games. Like, 3.5 and 5E are just different games on a mechanical level. They're just D&D in name alone. But, like, how they actually play are so different. So, yeah, of course. It's like first edition and second edition Pathfinder. I completely understand why people like first edition Pathfinder. It's not for me, but I definitely see why people like first edition Pathfinder. It's like, there are just styles of games that people enjoy. Some people really like the granularness of, you know, older editions. Or they like the pacing. That's another big thing that I think people don't talk about a lot as well, is the pacing of older D&D games. I feel like suit people better because it felt a lot more of like a slow but earned progression, where newer games can feel different. Pathfinder has a very fast growth chart, honestly. It's very easy to get to the next level in Pathfinder 2nd edition, which I think is a good thing, personally. But I definitely know people who prefer to play like the same level of character for like 4 months at a time. Speaking of video gaming RPGs, that Fabula Ultima is pretty cool. I like Fabula Ultima. I think it's a really cool idea. I think it's a really cool game. I really hope to see more of it. I think the only thing that would stop Fabula Ultima from really succeeding as well as like Lancer is the fact that the game just doesn't have that much depth, actually. Like, there's just not a lot to dive into. The builds are really fun. Building characters are really cool. I think they got a really good set of bones for the game structure, but there's just not much to dig into after that point. Like, there's no long-term goals or progressions really, other than just leveling up in that game. And like, I like the game, don't get me wrong. I think it's got some really fun ideas. I think it's got some really good bones. We'll have to see if they're capable of designing something to add into the game to give it that kind of extra depth, to keep people coming in, to keep people interested in like diving deeper into the game. But at the very least, it's very fun to make characters in the game, which I think is a pretty big step forward, honestly. It's like Lancer, I feel like most people mostly just get the idea of like what they want to do in the game, and it's more than just actually like playing Lancer. I feel like people would just like look at the mechs and like, oh my god, I want to play that, more than they actually get to actually try those mechs, which to be fair, I'm super guilty of as well. So that's why I know it works. But so I don't know. It's like every time an event like this happens, everyone sits there and prays that D&D goes under, or that Hasbro loses rights to D&D or something, and either D&D comes back, you know, rising from the ashes like a phoenix, or the rest of the market kind of gets to step up and fill the place. But in all reality, everything along those lines, there's no scenario where like the other TTRPGs fill the market. Again, it's marketing is the #1 weakness of TTRPGs, and the only reason why D&D pretty much gets away with it is, one, because Hasbro money, but two, because D&D is just as old as tabletop itself, pretty much. Like, people knew about D&D before you would even show them any advertising for it. So it pretty much just in the zeitgeist gets free advertising. And they have been putting money into things like the movie and all kinds of stuff. There's been tons of fan-made things around D&D, like, without actually having a very thorough, like, watching YouTube, right? How often do you see like an advertisement for playing D&D? Honestly, for some people, you probably get it every once in a while, sure, but not that often, you know? I never get any advertising for D&D. I do get some third-party content, though, that comes on, like Crooked Moon. I think that's really cool. But rarely, I don't ever see, like, D&D stuff. And even less so for literally anything else. Like, almost zero. That's why I think content creators are the lifeblood of TTRPGs right now. Content creators have to be, because they're like the only exposure people get to the fact that anything else exists. Because like, as long as I've been playing tabletop, the only way I ever discovered a new tabletop was finding it on the bookshelf in a bookstore. That was the only way I ever learned about any other tabletops. Or someone told me about one. That's how I learned about Deadlands and Paranoia. Oh, hey Grassy Knoll. Is that... Yeah, oh, thanks for the Prime sub. Oh yeah, don't forget, we have Prime subs, guys. If you got a Prime sub, I'd appreciate it. That was really hard to read. That might have just been the background issue, though. I think it was the background. I still gotta do some more stuff for the channel. There's been a lot of juggling I've had to do, and you know, it's the holidays as well. But I will be doing some more stuff Hey, thanks. I appreciate it. I still gotta do some more stuff for the Twitch, but I do plan on doing it. I do have sound alerts now. Good. More people should learn about Lancy. You know, I want. That's the point of the channel, right? Is the point of the channel is for me to show more people tabletop in general. Like, I would go full variety if I could, but unfortunately, the barrier to entry for full variety tabletop is actually insanely high, to the point where you have to have something kind of going for you already. Thanks for the bonk. I appreciate that. Good spending your points that way. But like, you have to have some other thing that you're focusing on, and then you jump into variety tabletop. That's like the only way. I need to have my friend Jeff watch your videos. He has bad luck when it comes to rolling dice. He's a good sport about it, though. Yeah, I don't know. I've seen some pretty legendary bad luck on the internet. Will Wheaton's luck is atrocious, for sure. I don't know if I have the worst luck. I definitely have some pretty terrible luck, though, in gaming in general. Hence the name of the channel. But I do plan on doing some more stuff on some other games. I will be releasing a full review for Vampire the Masquerade, 5th edition. We're currently running through that game. We're about halfway-ish through the season currently. So we'll be doing other tabletops as they come out. I like to at least play them for about, 10, 15 sessions just to get a feel for it. But obviously that's not necessary for every tabletop. There's a lot of tabletops that are very easy to grasp the concepts of without necessarily needing to play much at all. But there's definitely some games I think you have to. Like, I feel like Pathfinder is a game that you would need to play for some amount of time, because you have to learn how to play the game in order to understand like how actually really good and tactical and tactile the game feels. I think D&D is also similarly that way. I think there's a lot of parts of D&D that are really, really cool on the surface, but when you start digging in, you start seeing some problems as well. And that's a lot of tabletop in general, honestly. I definitely want to do more, though. More variety, more showing people. Because like I said, the only way some people discover new tabletops is by a random video on the internet sometimes. And while it's cool that people have found Lancer through my channel, considering that my channel only has 4,000 subs and I get about 1,000 views a day, I would really prefer if more people got to know about Lancer other than through what I could put out. Now, if I could grow the channel big enough where we can do that, that's cool too. But I wish there was just better ways of advertising tabletop. I appreciate that, Derek. And to be fair, there's not a lot of tabletop channels out there that produce content as frequently as I do. The most of the ones that do are D&D channels related, because when you're on that content treadmill, you have to keep running or otherwise you just fall off. So for the D&D content creators, it's a lot more, they need to pump out a lot more content. Hey, Gambonite, thank you for the follow. I appreciate you. But when it comes to like variety tabletop stuff, people tend to be a lot slower, take a lot more time. Mostly because, it takes time to learn about a new game. Goomba Banwa, I really want to look into. I really, really want to look into. That, and I would also want to look into Icon. Like, Abaddon makes some really good TTRPGs, and looking into Icon would be really, really cool. And then Goomba Banwa, I think, is also a really cool game. I definitely want to take a look into that one as well. That game is sick. Yeah, for sure. Like, trust me, if I could make enough money to pay my players to play my games more often, I would. Like, my ideal situation in the future is to become profitable enough through YouTube memberships and whatever, so I can pay people to play tabletop with me, so that I can make more content on tabletop. Yes, goblins with fat asses. Where's Phoebe? Phoebe loves that game. It's funny enough, he learned something really interesting through that, and he's planning on developing it into a more full-fledged system, which is really fun. Oop. So there's a lot, and that's also another thing as well. There's a lot of you who know games that sometimes I don't even know about. And again, it's like I do tabletop literally all the time. I spend all my time working on tabletop. I pump out, you know, currently my current rate is 4 videos a week, and there's still tabletop I don't know about. It's crazy. Yeah, for sure. We definitely when things start to settle after the holidays, I think we'd like to do more. I know my mods really want to start doing some more community night stuff, which, by the way, I think most people here are already in it. But if you are unaware, that we have a Discord linked in the description or below on Twitch, where we have 200 plus members. We have a bunch of people talking in chat all the time. Got people looking for games, and we're trying to we're trying to start some kind of community date nights, so we'll see. I'll play Wednesday. Yeah, for sure. I'd love to set something up for people. Like, I'd love to get some people in to do some stuff, try some games. I'd love to do like a Lancer tournament. I think that'd be really fun. Like a Lancer build tournament, but also maybe like an actual Lancer like 3v3 kind of situation. I think that'd be really cool. I like to see like a commentary done on that. I think you could do it with Foundry. I think Foundry provides enough like animations and stuff where characters are moving and doing all kinds of stuff. Could make it somewhat interesting. Have some shot calling and have some what's it called? Some color commentary on the side. I think that'd be really, really cool. I do have a fair amount of stuff on Roll20 as well. We moved mostly to Foundry, and to be fair, you don't need to own Foundry to play in someone else's Foundry game. The only person who needs to own Foundry is the person running the game. So we could also do stuff for Foundry that way as well. Though if I start doing that publicly, I'll have to do some stuff, because it's direct to host like server stuff, which, you know, leaves your system very vulnerable. And when you're doing anything publicly, you gotta protect your stuff. So I'd have to work some stuff around, but it's not impossible for sure. But yeah, see, this is the kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm aware. I know you're one of those kind of guys, Crassy. So for sure, it's just you know, like I said, this is a really bad time of year to be doing anything, because holidays and stuff going on, and use Forge. I'm assuming that's some kind of app. And I will have to say as well, next year is also going to be a little rough for a lot of it, because man, does Paizo just have a lot of books coming out. Paizo has so many really good books coming out, like from March onward. Oh, okay. I mean, the thing is though, is like that's something. If we get a lot of people into the community for it, like it'd be worth the cost. So, I definitely think that's something that we could budget for. Plus, if we start like memberships, or we get more memberships on the YouTube, or we open a Patreon, like that stuff can be easily paid for as well. But yeah, we have a lot of really good stuff for Paizo coming out next year. And I'm really hoping Paizo grabs Owlcat and we get a second edition CRPG in the works. Now that Rogue Trader is done, that'd be really, really cool. But that won't be for a few years. But I really hope that happens. But yeah, Paizo's got a lot of books coming out next year, so I'm gonna be having some blitzes I'm gonna have to do for material there. I know Lancer is getting a reprint of physical books. They're working with Dark Horse to do that, which I think is really, really cool. And I think there's some other really cool tabletop stuff coming out next year as well. We also get to see what D&D even has planned for whatever this next thing is, D&D Next, yada, yada, yada. And that's going to be huge. Whatever the news is, good or bad, whatever, it's going to be huge. So we're going to be really, really busy. Imagine a Strength of Thousands TTRPG, make Anchor a playable character. That would be kind of cool. I think that would be actually really cool. Hey, thanks Sansamore for the Prime sub. I appreciate you. I apologize. My Portuguese is not super good. Or is that Spanish? It looks like Spanish. They're so close. It looks like Spanish. It is Portuguese. I was right. You're welcome. I'm assuming. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, totally. I appreciate I translated it. I try my best anyway. I try to answer any questions I can as often as I can. You know, there's a lot of people asking questions. I have a lot of people asking questions in old videos, but I do the best I can. That also reminds me, at one point I'd like to get a proper translator on the channel as well, so we can have, I like to, you know, have some other versions of the channel in different languages like Portuguese, Spanish. I think there's another language that I've been asked for. I can't remember. I know Portuguese and Spanish are huge. I'd love to open some channels up of translated videos. What's going on here? Did I miss anything good? Yeah, actually you did miss some good stuff. We got a lot of people who are supporting the channel with their Prime subs, but we also got a lot of people who are interested. We're looking at doing some game nights in the Discord. Maybe looking into some other games, maybe doing some Lancer PvP, you know. We got some stuff cooking. We got some stuff cooking. And I'm very excited because with this next year, like, I'm planning on growing the channel to 10k subs sometime next year. So if we hit like 100 people on the Discord for every 200 or 2,000 subs we made so far, give or take, then we might get 500 people on the channel as well, depending on in the Discord. Like, I'd love to see some really big community events. I'd love to host some good community events. Run some one-shots, do some things. If I do some one-shots, though, I might do a Patreon thing for that. Do, like, a Patreon sub for, like, a... I know some other channels do that as well. Do a D&D night or a Pathfinder night or whatever. It'd probably be a tabletop night. It'd probably be, like, for different tabletop games or voted tabletop games, but we might do, like, a Patreon and people at a certain tier get into the game. I'm not sure. There's a lot of logistics behind that, and I'd hate to money gate people, but at the same time, I only have so much time. Yeah, Gembu. We multi-stream. We multi-stream on Twitch for TableTalk on YouTube, and we also multi-stream our live plays, which we have Tuesdays, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Our current live play is Vampire the Masquerade 5th Edition. And then after this season is over, which is in a month and a half or so from now, we'll be switching back to Pathfinder 2nd Edition for the new season of Riptide. But, so, yeah, I don't know. It's really hard for me to say, like, I want D&D to suffer. I want, like, the IP of D&D to suffer. I want people to stop playing D&D. Because, again, just because people stop playing D&D does not innately translate to playing other TTRPGs. You know what I mean? The market just won't inflate or won't fill the gaps that quickly. A lot of people will slip out. So there's that aspect to it, and there's also just the aspect to it as well of, like, I want people who enjoy D&D to get good D&D. I hope everyone gets an enjoyable version of the game. I really hope WotC and Hasbro stops being shitty, but, you know, that's not going to happen. They're not going to do it out of the goodness of their hearts. Yeah, thanks, James. Like I said, we're planning next year. Next year, we're gonna aim for 10K. I feel very confident that if I keep up the pace I'm working right now, we'll get there. You know, we'll get there, or we'll get really, really close. But when I hit 10K, the channel will get a lot more opportunities, a lot more marketing opportunities. 10K is when a lot of different sponsors are more likely to sponsor your channel as well. So if we can get that far, the channel will be, I think we'll start growing even faster. So, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, see, it's like a recipe for disaster. So all these layoffs, we've been talking about it before, but it seems like a majority of the layoffs on the from WotC were predominantly like art directors and people in the art department. There's also, you know, Mike Merles and some other really big names that got laid off as well. True. Yeah, I'd love to sponsor more of your guys' content. I'd love to be able to have enough views to give you guys value for that sponsorship. And as being one of the earliest sponsors, we might even work out a discount for it. So, like, nothing might happen, or D&D might just start seeing more AI art. If they start seeing more AI art, then there's a lot of people who are going to be very unhappy with that. And so that could be another fiasco coming in the next few months. I mean, we've already had D&D AI art causing issues. So the layoffs seem like an annual thing. It seems like a really shitty thing to do, and I don't know if this one is much more or much less than they currently do. So in the end, nothing might change. I don't think anyone knows. Even people who are much more knowledgeable on this kind of stuff, like the guys from Roll From Combat or whatever, I've known that they've made some serious like predictions that have just not come true even close. So I think people really underestimate the elasticity of the market when it comes to big IPs like D&D. And we've seen it with a lot of other markets as well. Because like we've seen a lot of very popular franchises put out real stinkers, do some really terrible stuff, and they still do just fine. You know, given enough time, no controversies for like 6 months. And it's like they're back to normal. So that I think is the worst outcome. I think the most likely outcome is the worst outcome, which is we have this issue, a lot of people fall off of tabletop, and then everything goes back to the way it was. But, you know, a lot of people who left just don't come back. And not like it'll create any substantial shrink in the in the like potential buyers section of it, but it's something that, you know, has to be refilled by new people getting into the game. And like I'm really sure we're going to start seeing a stronger push for other tabletops coming into the market. I think we just need a tabletop that really comes out that makes a big splash. What that is, who that comes from, who knows, honestly. Because like I gotta say, even with Critical Role's Candela Obscura, well, Critical Role's, I mean, yes, technically Critical Role, but Darrington Press is the ones actually producing it, and you know, like, I know there's some, I know Matt kind of helps out a little bit, but I know he's not the major producer of the stuff, so saying Critical Role doesn't seem accurate. But Darrington Press, Critical Role's company, made Candela Obscura, and honestly, it barely made a splash. It was such an underwhelming like drop. And granted, it just came out recently, and as I said earlier in the stream, market stuff always comes several weeks to even months after the fact, so we might actually see that it did a lot better than expected. But I mean, if something from one of the largest IPs directly related to TTRPGs that's not D&D putting out a book doesn't do really all that well, I mean, like, what hope does anyone else have? Like, what is the thing that would get people interested? I legitimately hope that thing is Lancer. I legitimately hope we start seeing a push of advertising from Lancer, and we get a lot more people looking at it from that perspective. Because I think Abaddon and the people he works with and everything, like, what they put out for Lancer and Icon are really, really cool. And I think they have such a very different art style, and the gameplay feels really good. That would be something I could feel would be more capable of making a splash. But who knows? Like, the market's really rough right now. The market's always been really rough for TTRPGs. TTRPGs has been growing for sure. We've been getting a lot more people, obviously. I mean, yeah, like what? 10 years ago, a D&D or tabletop related channel with 100k subs was unheard of. I haven't played any Morkborg. I think I'd like to try some Morkborg. I've been seeing tons of stuff around it, but I just haven't, like, I've never even seen a book in a store, so that makes it more difficult. Obviously, I could order it online, like most people do, but like I go to game stores to see if there's like a board game or something I want to buy, and so those are just the locations I'm much more likely to buy that kind of content. But I definitely think I want to look into Morkborg at some point, maybe this next year. Hopefully, you know, with how busy the channel is, we'll have to see. But Morkborg would be really, really cool, seeing all kinds of stuff. I mean, Evil Hat Production puts out a lot of really good games too, And I know like Blades in the Dark got a pretty strong community going on. Monster of the Week I think is such an not underrated game, but it's a game that just not enough people know about. But Monster of the Week's actually really fun. I think the problem with Monster of the Week is they just don't have a lot of art to show people for their books. So Monster of the Week stuff is a little under. I've also been hearing some really good things about Vaesen, and I actually have a book for Vaesen. Not that one. Boom. Vaesen. This is a really cool game. I love it because I believe it's Swedish. I believe Free League is Swedish. I got a book in Norway, but I ended up, or I realized that it was not the core book, so I had to order the core book. But I was in Norway when I got Vaesen, and I think, you know, it does me some good. My heritage, you know, my bloodline, being of Norse descent. Really cool to see a big game pop up in the market. Yeah, Mikey the Goat. I agree. That's also just a really hard part about all this, right? Is like, it's really hard to say I want D&D to fail when it's coming at a cost of, like, a lot of people are like, oh, with all these layoffs, maybe now D&D will fail. Thanks, Grassy. I appreciate you. I know I know he's been pumping it out. I will take a look. For people who don't know, me and Indestructible actually had a bit of a tiff recently on one of his videos and on Twitter. I don't have anything against the guy, but definitely it was not a very fun experience for me personally. The guy did not give any respect to anything I was saying at all, so it makes it very hard for me to want to look into it. But if it's a good game, it's a good game. I won't hold him against that. And I don't innately have anything against the guy, but our interaction was not the best. But like I said, I'm not someone who lets my biases stop me from enjoying tabletop or trying to support the tabletop market. So if it's a good game, it's a good game. But I'm going to give myself some breathing space first so that I don't have any biases when going into it, because I feel like that's the best I can do to be the most fair in it. So it was a very unfortunate situation. To be fair, I was the one who started everything. I gave a critique on his recent video about Candela Obscura, and you know, I felt like his video was very his video a lot of people like, and my opinion is my own, and I'm not saying that anyone, like, I think there's definitely some fair criticisms to make about Candela Obscura. But a lot of his video was making some pretty nasty assumptions about the people who made the game, which just really didn't sit well with me personally. There's a lot of bad assumptions about people who made the game, and about even the intent of the game's design, that made for a very colored and a very negative review on a game that I feel like did not deserve it. So, you know, I gave my criticisms. I attempted to have some kind of discourse, but everything I said was more or less dismissed out of hand without any kind of, like, process, you know. And maybe I didn't necessarily describe my points the best. Maybe my interactions on Twitch were not the best. I don't know. I won't claim complete innocence on the matter though. I did start everything with a critique, but you know, everyone's content should be critiquable, right? And he has no reason to listen to my critiques, and that's fine. But if he wants to engage with me, I would prefer he at least give me the time of day so we can talk it out, you know, rather than just dismissing everything out of hand. Seems like he was reviewing the creators and not so much the game. It really felt that way. He made some very uncharitable assumptions about the game's design, in my opinion. But again, like I said, a lot of people agreed with him. So who knows? Who knows who's right? Who knows who's wrong? All I know is that, like I said, I'll definitely look into Vagabond, but I will give it some time so that any personal bias I have is at least as minimized as possible. I don't view my personal self as a person who holds particular grudges, but you know, I want to be fair at the very least. Every tabletop deserves at least a fair reading, so. I'm out of water. I wish Alex was here. For all those who don't know, my co-host, Glue Boy, he was taken by Nurgle yet again. I think we're going to start a Nurgle counter next year. We'll put it like probably like in this corner somewhere. So every time he's gone, the Nurgle counter will go up. Bushido. I know there's a board game called Bushido. To be fair, Bushido is just such a generic name for something that it's very hard to identify. I don't think I've heard of the tabletop. Maybe I have. I'll look it up at the very least. I have not seen Bushido. It looks interesting. My only problem is that it is a game that obviously was not designed with a lot of people from, you know, Japanese descent input. It doesn't seem like it anyway, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but it definitely makes me cautious. For Boston, right? So Boston, I think is really cool. I mean, I enjoy monster hunting. That's kind of like one of my favorite ideas or tropes in like gaming. I've looked into it, and it seems very close to like a Powered by the Apocalypse type system. And I think it's good. Is it revolutionary? Probably not. I'm someone who prefers a little bit more of of chunkiness to my games. So it might be a fun one. It might be one we do for a season, but I haven't looked into it yet, like completely. I might do a review for it at some point in the near future. It looks very easy to review. So I'll definitely be taking a look into it. And that's another thing with tabletop is like it takes a lot of time to actually read and digest rules and everything. At one point on the channel, we were trying to do a one-shot every month for a new tabletop. But man, doing it that way just made it really rough considering my pretty busy schedule. I produce a lot of content every week. And stacking on top of 4 videos a week, time to read properly and digest a game to do a one-shot is rough, to say the least. Warfare Lore by Brian Lane is amazing content. Oh. As Foundry support too. That's pretty cool. I will bookmark this. That is very interesting. That does look really cool. Nurgle is out in force this season. Well, okay, but see, the thing is Glue Boy just has a really weak immune system. This is probably the 12th time this year he's gotten sick, if not more. Like, not even joking. We're going to add a Nurgle counter so that next year we'll see how many times Alex has to call out or is just sick on stream. I'm sure I can find a very snotty, sick-looking like typeface for the counter. I'm excited now. I'm excited to have this. He deserves it. He's gone. He's gone so often. We were actually going to talk about something different today with him here. We were going to talk about some of the issues that actually came up in the Indestructible review. Things like, is death necessary in a game? What constitutes like an actual review versus not? Some very interesting things that I'd love to like have a dialogue with someone about, but he wasn't here. So we're just going to talk about what came out. You just won't listen. Yep. If you want to know more about this, check out the Discord. All right, I'm going to be right back. I'm just going to take a quick bathroom break. It's going to be like a minute. So we'll be right back here. All right, we are back. Sorry for the delay. The toilet is a mimic. Good thing I was standing up. Oh, just looked that Warfare lore thing up. I'm always down for a Warlord class. Too bad I'm unlikely to use it since I don't really use third party in my games. So yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I have nothing against third party content, but I feel like unless I'm running out of things to do, it feels very weird for me to just pick up third party content. Actually, you know what? Uh, bonus points for anyone who recognizes this TTRPG. I was just thinking about TTRPGs that no one has heard about. I got a fun one for y'all. Has anyone heard of Black Void? Look how cool this book is. It's also a thick book. Has anyone heard of Black Void? I'm very curious to see if anyone has heard of this game. I don't think this is the really gross one. Probably. Maybe. I don't think so, but maybe. See, yeah, it looks awesome, right? Honestly, I don't think this game is that good. Unfortunately, they reuse art a ton in this book, which is super unfortunate. And honestly, the game doesn't... I also got this book in Norway, funny enough. Let's see... No, I don't think this is the super gross one. I think this one is just an interesting game. Like, and the issue is, like, the game is so pretty. Like, I'll show a spread. Like, it looks really cool. This is definitely a book that sold me mostly on the art and the way it looks. I mean, look at this creature. I just opened to a random page, right? Look at this creature. I don't think I've shown this book off before, but I might have at some point. This is a... How to describe it? The best way I can describe it is it's kind of like a cosmic horror adventure game, you know? Like, so the biggest thing is, like, Earth has fallen, and now all of humanity is spread out through different dimensions, really. And so you play, like, standard medieval warriors, caste type people. There's some mystics that do some, like, blood magic and everything like that. It's a very gritty, it's not a very high power fantasy game. Like, the characters don't ever get super strong. They you're just like a badass warrior. You're not like superhuman or anything like that. But it also takes place in, like, a trans-dimensional universe where you go to different worlds and stuff like that. Thanks, Rix Fellas. I appreciate you being here. Have a nice night. But you kind of travel around, and you go to these cities, and it's all about, like, politics and stuff like that, going to different dimensions, dealing with the various types of people who live there. There's also, like, these kind of void creatures and void corruptions that you have to fight off. But it's very much a oh goodness, what would be a really good example? like the biggest part about it is mostly just no matter where you go, you're always going to be dealing with like the inhabitants that live there, and it's not like it's a trans-dimensional universe, so like people of different dimensions always exist in these areas, and it's a lot to do with like nobility, marquises, merchant class, hierarchies, all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of like an adventure game that has a lot of like political intrigue and is set kind of like in the 1400s, but also trans-dimensionally. It's, in fact, actually, can I find a, let's see. It says, you're descendants of the survivors from Earth, the lost cradle of humanity. Lynn is your home now, swarming with outlandish lifeforms, eccentric daemons, and fickle demigods. It's a swelling cosmopolis of intrigue, wonder, treachery, corruption, beauty, decadence, and eldritch menace. Behind you lies a smoldering ruin of your once great species trying to reclaim former glory. Before you are the mysteries of Lynn and a vast treacherous cosmos. It's a D12 game. It states here it's got fast-paced combat system based around combat maneuvers, customizable weapons and armor, unique and novel powers, non-linear character progression, including enlightenment and influence aspects, extensive lore and setting chapters, including notable people, factions, multiple detailed world descriptions, comprehensive arbiter's guide and sample NPCs, 40 plus new or original sentient and esoteric species, beasts, and void entities, and 60 plus inspiring plot hooks for creating an exciting and harrowing adventure. So, yeah, I don't know. When I looked it over, it didn't look super impressive, but maybe I need to give it a deeper look. I'm not 100% sure. But again, this book looks sick. This is a book that I picked up because it looks awesome, and no one knows about it. I don't even know if the game is honestly that good or not. It didn't look particularly good to me, and honestly, the book layout is pretty but garbage. But I'll definitely take a look at it at some point in the future. But unfortunately, I think it's also just one of those TTRPGs that, like, I don't think reading the book would be enough to do a proper review. I think I'd have to play it for a few sessions to actually get the gist of what the game is intending. So, you know, it just takes lots of time. See, that's the thing. World building material is what super gets me. Candela Obscura actually has a really good world building section in their book. Like, one of my favorite TTRPGs of all time is Anima Beyond Fantasy. And what really sold it for me was when I opened up the world book, you would get like a paragraph describing individual cities, the region, how that region reacts to magic, how that region's religion, because religion's a huge aspect of the game, how they react with religious stuff. And then you get a bunch of different locales with like 1 to 2 sentences describing them, oftentimes like in an intriguing way. And then at the very end of each section, you would get a little story hooks section about, you know, like different events that are happening in the area. I absolutely love that kind of stuff where you can look in the book and get ideas for your campaign using the material. Most of the time when I ran Anima Beyond Fantasy, which, by the way, some of my best TTRPG memories for me and my friends comes from that game. Most of that stuff we were running was based on the stuff I read from the book. That's how you know you got a really, really cool game. The system itself is garbage. It's really broken. It's really easy to make a bad character, and it's really easy to make a world-shattering good character by like level 3, right? So if we were all on the same page, the game was great, and we had some really good memories in it. Candela Obscura actually kind of did something similar to this, and that got me super hyped. Not only about it, I had, I think 5 or 6 different like pre-made adventures in the book as well. Like, I was very, very impressed. I think any game that goes to effort to really flesh out their world in a very easy and digestible way just makes for a good game in general. But yeah, I'll have to definitely check it out. I know I've heard good things about Boston, so I'll be checking out Boston. And excuse me. Yeah, I don't know. Abaddon, the creator, or one of the primary creators for like Lancer and for Icon, said something that I very much hope is going to be the case, where they were saying, you know, that we're going to experience a new like 90s of tabletop soon, which would be really cool, because for people who weren't in the tabletop scene or alive in the 90s, the 90s were like a really big point for tabletop, where you had a lot of companies coming out with tabletop games, and we had some of the biggest bangers of tabletop kind of coming out around that time. People, I was reading this a lot. There's a lot of people who say that the 90s were like the golden age of tabletop, when in actuality, tabletop right now is more popular and more successful than it's ever been. Like, as much as the 90s was really cool, and there's some really, really cool games that came out during that time. I mean, it was like around the birth of World of Darkness, and I think Deadlands as well. Deadlands is also such a really good game. There's some really good games that came out during that time, but there were even more like tenfold companies that came out trying to make TTRPGs and went bankrupt. It was also during the era of like late 90s to early 2000s, where a lot of tabletop games were super victim to piracy. Like, there was just so many people pirating stuff of tabletop all the time that it just crippled the TTRPG market. Like, some were able to make it out, but most didn't. It was really, really rough. But I really hope we get a 90s era again with a bunch of really cool games coming out, a lot of cool themes and everything, because, like, disagree with me and we'll have a discussion, but I feel like a lot of tabletop coming out nowadays is too safe. And what I mean by that is they're just very sanitized in a lot of ways. And while I definitely think it's really good to have a strong market of games that people can play without having to worry about, you know, seeing anything that is off-putting or the like, I definitely feel like the market could use a healthy injection of some really grungy stuff. Not offensive. Never offensive. But just darker stuff, just grungier stuff, just a little bit. I mean, yeah, it's like wherever there's lights, there's shadows, right? The brighter the light, the darker the shadows. And I'm definitely not advocating for anything to be offensive or designed in a way to make people feel uncomfortable. But I really would like to see more games with some harsher tones and some grittier settings. You know what I mean? More provocative games, yeah. Like I said, never offensive. Never offensive. But definitely, you know, I feel like there's some really fun games that are coming out currently, but there's also just this very strong sense of like hyper sanitization that, well, is fine. And I feel like people need some of that as well. I feel like that's just most of the current trend, and I just want to see some more diversity. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's really hard to know where that line is, And for a lot of people, the line is in different places, you know. Uh, I agree. There's some things, there's some like parts out there of humanity that's just awful, and it should be discussed, you know, rather than just removed. Right, or they want to put terrible things like that one game that was taking real life cultures and attributing stats to it, you know. I can't even remember. I think it was like Filipino people. There was like it was some super racist thing or whatever. It was very gross, and that's not what I'm advocating for in the slightest. But I want to be in a game in a shitty world with people doing shitty things. That's the Justin Lanassa game. Yeah, I don't even remember what it was called. But I want to be in a game in a world with people doing shitty things so that I can play a heroic individual who goes and fights that stuff, you know. It's like punching Nazis. It's the reason why a lot of video games back in the day were all about shooting and punching Nazis, because that was kind of like acceptable, right? And there's aspects to that that are not good, but for the most part, you know. Ah. But yeah, you know, like, man, give me some shitty people doing shitty things so I can be shitty back to them. You got me now checking out the dystopian RPG Black Void. Hey, you know what? If you learn some cool stuff, I'd love to hear it. If we have a Discord linked in the description, if you haven't joined us on Discord already, I'd love to see anything you have brought up in the Discord. I have the book. I read it on the flight back, but I don't know. It's a game I think I'd have to really do like some serious sitting down and reading to really grasp. It's just a very dense book, but I'd love to know more about it. Thoughts on the world? I haven't I haven't looked into it. I did hear about it. I know a lot of people are upset about it. And I mean, the hard part about it, right, is like there's no correct answer, which is a very lame way to put it for me, because I hate being this stance constantly of like, well, everything is shades of gray. But that's just like the case, right? Because the thing with the law World of Darkness is that the major themes of World of Darkness is the darkness in humanity. It's the bad behaviors. It's oftentimes about putting yourself in a situation, playing an imperfect person, trying to survive, which I think is a very valid thing to play, by the way. But at the same time, some people just want to yeah. Yeah, and that's a very fair point, but I think it's important to have material to work off of, you know. I think grit and dirt is something that needs to exist in media. I feel like hyper sanitization has never worked. I mean, that's what the Satanic Panic was all about, after all. And time again, people have shown that we can play games like Mortal Kombat or Grand Theft Auto or whatever without being morally corrupt individuals ourselves, you know. Sometimes it's interesting to dive into the dark aspect. Sometimes it's interesting to play as a character who is flawed and a somewhat terrible person. Sometimes it's important to play against other people, like actual people, not monsters, that are also terrible, and dealing with how to go through that. I think that's a valuable experience. And it's unfair to create a game and expect the person to run the game to create all that stuff themselves. People need inspiration, people need guidance on how to not take it in a terrible direction. That's also a big thing, is when you don't provide games that have proper guidance on like how to navigate these kind of scenario situations, you get people who just do terrible, vile things because they don't know better, you know. I'm all about creating safe spaces for people in games, but it's kind of like horror movies, right? If you don't like gore, if you're not good with horror movies, then don't watch horror movies. Gaming and TTRPGs should be the same. There should be some pretty dark, messed up games out there. Again, not offensively so. I like implicit dark content and or good content warnings. That's also, I think, a thing that the TTRPG scene needs. Is I think we need our own rating system. I think we need a rating system because that's a big part of TTRPGs. Whether anyone agrees or not, the process of stepping into a character's shoes, of creating a link of empathy, or even just the act of role playing things, is a deeply personal situation. And while that varies from person to person, how deep into the role play they get and all that kind of stuff, it is important to very explicitly know what you're getting into when you're getting into a tabletop, because that can create some very bad, or like, because it's a social game, it can create some very awkward situations. It's kind of like, that reminds me of that guy on the internet where it's just like, you don't have to pick, why not have both? I think that's fair. I think that's fair, and I don't think that removes anyone's agency or anything. I think having a book very clearly have content warning on what the contents or idea of the TTRPG are involved is something that should give people everything they need to engage or not engage with a product. I think that is the fairest approach. I think it's unhealthy to over sanitize any media, any market. And it's important to be able to create safe places for people who need to have those safe places, you know. That's why having good content labels, trigger warnings, all that kind of stuff creates a safety net for people who don't wish to engage in that. They can look at the book, look at the game, and be like, this is not for me, and not engage. If people think that's too PCA or whatever, like, well, and see, that's the thing, right? Is in the end, there's always going to be bad actors. In the end, there's always people who are going to want to produce the game they want to produce, and so they're either going to lie on their book because it's going to get more sales because it's going to be deemed safer, or it's going to be people who are out there putting out the most vile shit they can just to make people run away and cry because they find that entertaining. Yeah, I mean, all good parts here. To be fair, though, it's not the market's job to help your friendships or build trust between you and the people at your table. So, I mean, goats are goat. Thanks for the follow. I appreciate you. Like, there's a, and I mean, again, this is kind of like a big reason why tabletop I think is super important, and someone like myself, especially, who's very communication orientated, who's very, one of the key concepts I work with is trying to communicate ideas the best I can between myself and other people, or even between two other people. It's important to have individuals like myself who are trying to create spaces where everyone's thoughts and opinions, or at least as much as possible, are taken into consideration. So having people like myself or many other people who make content on, you know, creating safe content, doing session zeros, all that kind of stuff is super important. I haven't really done any videos on, I had a table talk on like session zero stuff before. And I really should do a video on like proper content warning and doing a great session zero stuff. But those resources should be available and should be commonplace. So, you know, definitely something to add to the channel as well. And actually, I really like what Krause has said here. So absolutely, role-playing should push boundaries in a safe and trusting way. Sometimes we go too far, but that's part of the comprehensive experience. Yeah, and that's also a thing as well. Is like when things go too far, it's not, the reaction isn't burn everything down. The reaction is stop, communicate, set boundaries, move on, you know, or disengage, come back another time, and reaffirm boundaries and go forward, you know, all that kind of stuff. But I think one of the great things of tabletop is the pushing boundaries part. Pushing boundaries, I think, is very healthy. It allows people to put themselves in situations they normally wouldn't be put into in a safe environment, and allows people to engage in social situations in a way that has little to no actual repercussions, or at least for the person themselves. I think that's one of the healthiest things of tabletop, and having a hyper sanitized gaming space makes that very difficult, because then what topics you can talk about become very controversial. When in actuality, the really hard boundaries are mostly just set at the things that are already excuse me, tea gets me all phlegmy. They're already like socially unacceptable. Use of slurs, racial, you know, depictions as a player or otherwise. Players doing abhorrent acts for enjoyment is terrible. Like, torturing a guy can be a very gritty thing. But if you're torturing a guy because it's fun, then it is a problem. And yeah, and there's ways of doing it that can be good. You can have intimate relations in a TTRPG that's completely, like, safe for work. You know what I mean? Plenty of times I've had players be like, oh, I want to pick someone up. And we have a little moment. They engage, they talk with someone, and then they take them up to their room. Bam. That's where it ends. We're all good. And the session continues. You know, being able to play a character who's confident enough to do something like that is very good, and is something that some people would like to kind of like practice in a way. Not like I would make a very good pickup more often than not, but it's something. It's an interesting thing to look into for sure. But you know, it stops as the door closes. Yeah, fade to black moments. Fade to black moments are important. They're not censorship. They're implications of deeds that do not need to be shown. It's not like it's being removed. That's a very different kind of role play. And to be fair, if that's the kind of group you're in and you're and that's what you're all into, I think that's fine too. Like, I'm not even saying that doing stuff like that is necessarily bad, but it's just generally shouldn't be done. You know, has to be done in very specific situations. So we're kind of getting to the end of the stream here. So I kind of want to leave off with like some general thoughts. The whole WotC Hasbro thing is terrible, and we should have complete sympathy for the people who lost their jobs. People should understand that this is mostly a Hasbro thing, and this seems to be like an annual practice, so the impact is probably not going to be as big as people are hoping for. And people shouldn't be using the loss of these people's livelihoods to like fuel their hatred for Wizards of the Coast, you know? People be like, oh yes, now that people lost their jobs, people will start hating D&D now or whatever. And it's just like, that shouldn't be a cost that had to be made, you know? But I do hope that people in the industry find work, and that other people who are working for Hasbro or whatever second guess, try to find work elsewhere if they can, and you know, leave Hasbro and WotC hurting so that they can respect their staff better. But you know, that's probably not likely to happen. I do hope this creates an influx of people who are looking for new TTRPGs so they can find some new games to hop into, some new channels to look into, for instance. And I hope we see an indie boom of TTRPG stuff. I think we're slowly building up to an indie boom with just how many times Hasbro and WotC dropped the ball. Because they've dropped the ball a lot lately. And something's bound to give. I don't think D&D is ever going to go like completely under. But I really hope that they at least start hurting enough to start paying better attention to the people who are buying stuff from them and to their staff. That's all I can hope for. I hope this results in a better D&D for people who enjoy D&D, and I hope this allows for other games in the market to shine a little bit more from companies that really will deserve it. Beyond that, I don't know. Have any of you got any closing statements? Any final words you want to leave a stream while you're all thinking and or typing about that or waiting for YouTube to catch up? Don't forget, we are affiliated on Twitch. So if you have a Prime sub, we'll gladly take your Prime sub. Hopefully they'll lead to some cool projects in the future. In addition, join our Discord linked in the description below, or below on Twitch if you're there. We have a bunch of community stuff kind of like in the works. I know my mods are getting ready for some community stuff, and I have some Lancer stuff that I really want to get to. Maybe some game nights, who knows? Yeah, our Discord has been growing pretty steady. We get new people chatting all the time. And we got some great stuff. Thanks, Thumb Ugly. I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Gambit. I hope that the market gets opened up. I hope this creates an indie scene. That's, I think, the big thing, is I want an indie scene to be created so that D&D can still be a front runner and still can bring people into the hobby, but there's an indie scene that people are also super hyped about. It's kind of like how video games did it, you know. There's still the big corporations. There's still a lot of people out there who do big games, but the indie scene exploded, and now a lot of people in the indie scene, I mean, even win awards. It's crazy. Yeah, happy holidays to everyone. Enjoy. Let me double check the schedule here real quick. Okay, there should be a table talk next week, and possibly the week after. If there's not going to be a tabletop, I'll leave a community announcement on the Discord, and I will also do it on the YouTube channel. So stay in tuned for that, and as well, we should have Vampire the Masquerade this coming Tuesday, but we will not be having it the Tuesday after. But we'll see. Depends on everyone's schedules. That's gonna be it for me, though. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a good night. Bye.